100,000 people. Those 100,000 people may be different in many ways, but there's one thing that brings them all together: the Green Bay Packers. In Titletown, the blue-collar city only knows hard work, tailgating, championships, but more importantly, they know family.
We have a saying in this town: faith, family, and the Green Bay Packers are all that you need. Sanjay and I grew up in Green Bay. You could say that we are Green Bay, or even better, the voices of Green Bay. We bring a local feel of Packer fandom to a worldwide audience.
Friendship, family, and football.
Ladies and gentlemen,
This is the Freezer Podcast. We are back. This is the Freezer Podcast, where we bring your local feel of Packer fandom to a worldwide audience. I'm Sanjay, and alongside me, like always, is Fred. And no Matt today, a little under the weather, but we are brought to you by, nonetheless, Game On Wisconsin. And we are live here in our home studios on a Victory Thursday. Sorry again for the scheduling issues. Obviously, I don't do a show every other week, but also Fred was in enemy territory for the nice holiday break, and we wanted to do a show for you guys on Thursday. So but before we get into any of that, obviously you guys are all aware of the news that happened on Monday, and obviously if you watch football, you obviously probably heard about it, or you tuned in knowing that everybody else was talking about it. But obviously these last few days we've been just kind of hoping and praying that Damar Hamlin was going to be okay, and coming out of recovery, I guess you could say, due to the cardiac arrest that he had on the field off of a hit on T. Higgins. So we have been getting a lot of great news in the last 12 hours from his family and from his agents. So it is good to see that. And obviously you could tell the whole entire NFL was shook up about this, and even our own players on our team, shared their feelings about it and obviously sent their prayers. Obviously every team showed their I guess you could say their kindness and put their prayers out there as well. But yeah, Fred, your thoughts real quick on that. Obviously this is a very unprecedented kind of injury, and a very unforeseen thing that you never think was going to happen, but obviously it did, and now it kind of changes the face of the NFL season a little bit.
Yeah, it gets a little crazy. It's first and foremost, I'm super happy to hear about the progress. As a parent, it's even harder sometimes watching that kind of stuff, just because you start to think about, oh my gosh, is this, do you want your kids to play a sport that something so crazy can happen? But I don't, that's a whole nother topic we could probably go down. But I think the cool thing about it, if there's a cool thing about it, I guess, is that, you just see so many people kind of pull together, and communities come together in like tragic moments. We got to see, his foundation, raising millions and millions of dollars, not just from people like, billionaires sending in money, but random dudes in Buffalo, random dudes in Ohio sending 20, 30, 40 bucks to support it. It shows a lot. One thing that I just wish that I could say to everybody, is I wish we all had that same compassion and that same attitude towards each other all the time, without a big accident, without a tragic
it does suck that it only comes out when something
it's
bad
only
happens.
big things, and then we pull together and we're incredible as humans.
America looks awesome at that point.
We look so great, and it's not even America, it's just humans. We can do such great things, and I feel like it really upsets me that it has to be something like that to happen. And that might not be a hot take or a great take for everybody, but man, what I saw in the last 4 days, 3 days, whatever it's been, I don't even know, was the works of incredible, awesome love and grace for each other, and I just wish that happened more often.
Well said, Fred. I hope this is a nice moment that we can take forward as humans, and we can, act upon that, and hopefully we can all be better people because of it. So good to see that his signs are better, and hopefully the NFL can figure out what they're going to do with the game. It sounds like it's probably not going to happen, but as far as the scenarios of what happens with the standings and things, I'm sure they'll release those updates as soon as possible. But we still have football this week, so we have one last week of football. It starts on Saturday. So there's a lot of implications over there in the AFC when it comes to those top four seeds. So a lot of different things could happen there, and I'm kind of curious to see. Well, actually, let's just real quick talk about that, because there was something proposed out there that they do something based on win percentage, doing the seedings that way, so that in the event of something like this happening like that, it could be based on that more so than based on record. And that's a curious one to me too, because obviously, you know, there's so many different things that apply with, when you get your standings and, your conference record or your divisional record, or just based on, your total record. But, it seems to me that with this game that hasn't been played, a lot of implications just went completely the opposite in someone's favor, like in the Ravens' favor, because now the Bengals probably could have, if they win that game, which they were up, they could have possibly sat their starters, and the Bengal or the Ravens probably would have been, they would have for sure been in, but their seeding doesn't change. Now the Ravens are looking at it like, whoa, we might be able to change things up here. And same thing with the Patriots as well. They could probably play, spoiler alert, the Bills probably had their eyes on that first round bye, and then trying to get that number one seed, but now they have to play for their lives to keep that two seed. So a lot of changes. Obviously, this is, we're not blaming the injury,
Right.
Thing, but a lot of different things are changing here. And I don't know if whatever decision the NFL makes, is it going to be a good one?
Yeah, it's a tough call, man. I don't have any idea. I don't have any answers. I don't know what like protocols are, how that works. I think it's a pretty new situation. Which kind of goes back to the night of the situation, right? Everybody was calling for, Goodell to cancel the game within the first 8 seconds, which the things that came out for that first 5 minutes thing, that was, that was a little weird, but there's a lot of things that you have to consider, right? There's a lot of things you have to go through. You can't just, if in a perfect lollipop gumdrop world, I would say they both get, a tie, and it just kind of like goes into la la land. We don't mess with any of the seating, and we just pretend that game never happened. But that's just not really possible. So it's interesting. It'll be interesting to see how they do it. Because obviously as tragic as the situation was, like there's still a lot of teams, a lot of corporations, a lot of businesses that that have to still prosper. And isn't that just the world we live in?
I know. Yeah. In the end, it's still a $1 trillion business, the NFL, and, they need to make their money. Obviously, each organization needs to make their money based on their stadium and things. So it's a crude world sometimes, but I hope these last 4 or 5 days have really, opened the eyes of everybody to know that there is more to football than just football.
Yeah.
So,
I think they're gonna do the right, like they'll figure it out, and I think they'll figure out a good way to do it. I'm just super interested to see how they do it, right? I don't know if that means
yeah,
I don't even know. I don't even know if I can
and the
consider
fact
putting that
it's already
together.
Thursday, so whatever
Right.
decisions they need to
Like,
make, they need to make it the next like 24 hours. So,
and I don't even know if you can, right? So like if it's
right, and
just
that's the thing too.
done, I
Can
mean, if
you?
the game does not happen, which it obviously it looks like there's no way it can happen because they're not gonna say tonight, hey, you're playing on Saturday. At
I
least I
want
don't
to ask
think
you
they
one
would.
thing too.
What?
Proposal, and this is obviously, just spitballing here, but I also have always felt, and I don't know if you feel the same way, but I always feel like, why don't we actually have a week before the playoffs as a bye week? You have the same thing in the
Yeah.
Super Bowl. You want this super wild card weekend, yet if you could potentially, your teams are exhausted from trying to fight their way into the playoffs, and maybe they're like an injury that they could just have an extra 7 days of rest to give you a better product on the
Yeah,
field. And
I agree.
obviously in this case, if you had a catastrophic, seismic event that happened, you would have this week to potentially, play an extra game if you needed to, or some sort of like, buffer week that, oh, hey, look, may not be able to play it this week, but we could do it next week if we had to. And you have
I
all February too. So it's like your
Yeah.
February's not like locked. Go ahead.
I think if it was me, and I've thought about this before, it's what, like 2 weeks, right, after the final playoff game until the Super Bowl? I believe it's about 2 weeks,
Pretty
or
much,
is
I
it
think. Yeah.
longer? Yeah. Why not split that up? Why not have at the end of the regular season, you have, everyone gets a
One full
1-week
week.
bye,
Right.
then they play the playoffs, and then they have a 1-week bye going to the Super Bowl because a lot of teams are gonna be on, like there's times where teams are just coming on really hot at the end of the playoffs and they
Right.
get into the Super Bowl, then they go sit for 2 weeks. I mean, I just feel like I mean, I've never been in that situation, of course. I'm not that great of an athlete. I'm pretty good though. But I can't imagine that like that's helpful, man. Like if we're in the playoffs and we're kicking ass and we're running it, like yeah, I'll take the week off just to kind of maybe get some of those little nagging injuries, some of those Charlie horses out of
Right.
there. But like, man, 2 weeks feels like, I don't know. I just feel like maybe you lose. I mean, you lose a little bit of edge on that. Like, I don't know. So
That would be the only
why not? Why
concerning
not
thing is
take?
that
Why not take a week off after the regular season to get 1 week of play of a bye, rest up. That way, you guys are everyone's ready to rock and roll into the playoffs, and then you have a tough, gritty playoffs. You have a week off, Super Bowl, boom.
the only concern would be that number one seed because they already have a bye in the first place. They would potentially have 2 weeks off
That's
because
true.
that is the only issue. Because I'm sure they
Yeah,
don't want to be off 2 weeks. But again, maybe you don't even have the bye anymore. Now you have 1 versus 8. Maybe you add another team in the playoffs, and now you're in NBA playoff territory where one seed plays 8 seed. I don't know. It's a lot of kinky stuff there. Not kinky, quirky stuff there.
that's kind of kinky though.
I
I mean,
mean,
you
it's
can
kind
get
of
kind
kinky.
of
You're right.
kinky with it.
Let's
I
get
mean,
wild with it, right? They already call it Super Wild Card Weekend.
yeah,
So yeah, that's we'll see. I mean, it's going to be a pretty interesting weekend. We'll see how things shake out,
yeah,
playoff wise. But we have our own worries to worry about, and that's called the Detroit Lions coming uh into our stadium. But we'll get to them last. But let's talk about that huge victory against the Minnesota
let's
Vikings
talk
because
about that.
that was one of the wildest games I've probably seen against at least a Viking team. Because I mean, we've had some pretty wild games against other opponents, but I feel like the Viking games are typically pretty close, and it's
Yeah,
usually a pretty like gritty battle. And you're like, oh, like you're just every play seems to be a difference maker. And like we've had some crazy things where Clay Matthew doesn't get a call, and or he
yeah,
gets a call on him, sorry, and we get an interception taken away. We've seen the James Jones hoodie game. We've seen some the Aaron Rodgers collarbone game. We've seen
yep,
some plenty of like interesting Viking matchups. We've seen the tie. We've seen Adrian Peterson run all over us. We've seen the the Joe Webb game, and so
yeah.
we've seen different ones. But this one happened to be the one time that probably you and I can agree with this. The one time that the Packers finally played probably a full course meal, right? I guess you could say, of offense, defense, and special teams against an opponent, and a good opponent at that.
Yeah, it's I wasn't expecting it. Not even a little, not even the slightest. I was not expecting what happened to happen. Um, and it was, you're right. It was the full course meal for the first time in this year, for sure. I can say, I don't
For sure
know.
this year.
I don't know. Maybe even going pretty deep into last year.
Yeah, if someone can
I
find a
just can
game
hear
that's better than
Matt's
this.
voice being like, "Ah, I forgot one half team, one half. We're only playing one quarter. We're only playing one."
Yeah, yeah, his
Every
ears are
single
ringing right
week,
now.
and I didn't. There was no argument with it because that's how it was. But yeah, no, it was crazy. And like, I mean, even like when we did the predictions last week, right? Like, I said to myself, I'm like, eh, I was super nervous, right? I think they were playing really well. I thought Dalvin Cook was coming off a great week. Justin Jefferson, on pace to, break records. Kirk Cousins seemed a little bit more confident. Their defense had something to prove. It was a game they could knock us out. It just really, I was nervous. I was super anxious about going into the game. And I was driving to Minnesota. Didn't talk about it once in the car. I just kind of like was in my own head a little bit. Um, and then it's funny actually. We got to Minnesota at like maybe like pulled into like downtown Minneapolis like 2:30, and there's a brewery down there called Black Stack, and it's like my absolute go-to beer. I love it. It's my favorite brewery in the whole world, and it's only in Minneapolis. So I'm like, hey, I'm like, can we quick stop there? I want to like get a glass from there and buy, 4-pack and like, just see it, right? I see it all
Yeah,
the
right,
time.
right.
I'm really excited about it. So Amanda's like, yeah, sure, man. So, there I pull up with my kids and my family to the brewery, and it's a well-known like Viking games, like on a 20 thing TV. There's Viking parties there. So I'm like, oh man, like I was wearing all black. I didn't have any Packer stuff on. I'm like, I'm going in incognito. Like, I don't want any beef. We open up the door, like out of the car doors, and Charlie's like, I can smell Vikings around here. And I'm like, oh, shut up. And there's like 3 guys outside, and I'm like, dang it, dude. And so we go in and they like sit down, and I go and I like go up to order, and I'm just trying to like keep a low profile, right? Like I'm like, I don't want any beef. I'm just trying to get to the hotel. And no joke, this lady walks up right next to me to order, and she's got on like a vintage old sweater Paul Horning jersey. And I'm
Oh,
like, so I
okay.
look over and I was like, hey, I like your jersey. And she's like, oh yeah, thanks. She's like, it's my dad's. And I'm like, yeah, it's pretty, is that rough wearing it in enemy territory? And she's like, I've been wearing it for a long time. It's not a big deal. I don't care. And I'm like, well, I gotta say, I'm like, my grandpa played with Paul Horning, and she's like, oh, it's so cool, blah, blah, blah. We like talked for like a half a minute. And then I got my stuff and I was walking out and I was like, we're gonna kick their ass today. I'm like, we're
Yeah.
gonna kick. That was the sign I needed to be
You
like,
just
no, no,
gave
no,
that
no,
lady.
no. We knew it. So I wish I would have like went back after the game and saw her, but like, yeah, because like I'm sure she's like one of no other Viking fans there. And the whole day driving there, it was like every gas station we stopped at, there was like 100 Viking people because they were
Of
all
course.
traveling towards us. So that was kind of crazy, but yeah, to be in the hotel room, to sit there and just to watch a game where it felt like just everything was kind of falling into place. Everything seemed to be working outside of like maybe our offense, but the kick return, the defense, I don't know, it just felt great to see a game like that where we looked genuinely like the hottest team in the NFL right now. And I think to me, that's like the one thing I take the most out of it is there's some notice now, right? Like we just destroyed a high caliber team, technically, according to all the other, pun or talking heads out there. And I think that's a huge part. I think that's a huge thing for us.
Yeah, it was definitely a statement game as far as the division is concerned, also as the NFC is concerned, because we've played now 3 of the NFC opponents pretty well. I mean, I'd like to think I'd like to think that Eagles game, I think if Rodgers is a little bit healthier, I do think that we
Yeah.
probably are a little bit closer than that. You saw Jordan Love make some plays as well. But you beat the Cowboys, you beat the Vikings now. Those are your top 2 teams at least there. And then, 49ers, that's a revenge game no matter what. If we can, sneak into the playoffs and, play them first round if they are the 2 seed. But, this is a good measuring stick too to see like, okay, look, that's still a top notch offense. Now, I know people are going to start like, well, not us, but more so Viking fans are going to say our field was trash. It's like we played on Soldier Field. But I'm like, look, why are we not falling? What,
That's such a little
like, I
bitch
know,
comment, dude.
right,
Like,
but, like,
I
it's
hate
still
that
gonna
kind
be
of stuff.
said. It's still gonna be said, which is kind of interesting
But we were
because
on it. Like the Packers were on it.
that's what I'm saying, like, we were both on the
So
same field, and I
what's
didn't
the
see us
difference? Like
falling.
because our trainers put the right studs on. Like you're telling me your trainers didn't either A, tell you to put the right studs on from the beginning because they're that incompetent, or B, you didn't make
Yeah,
the
you're an
adjustments.
NFL
Like
training staff, like, or not training, but, like, equipment staff, and you didn't know how to, like, prepare
I
for
doubt it.
Lambeau, like,
Yeah.
you've played Chicago, you've played us, you've been in this situation before, don't give me that crap. So, but either way, you still have Dalvin Cook, you have Kirk Cousins, you have JJ, you have, TJ Hawk, and we basically shut all of them down, minus TJ Hawk, he had his little bit, but, yes, this guy right here had his day. And obviously, we'll talk about the defense first because I think they definitely
Yeah.
deserve the biggest applause. But Jair Alexander was obviously the focal point of this conversation because of his, of his trash talking early. Obviously, the secondary got torched in the first matchup week 1. JJ had I think it was 184 yards, I think, receiving, and 11 catches or something, 12 catches. So he ran rampant on an entire defense. But Joe Barry, in this weird transformation of a coordinator in the last few weeks, has figured out a way to consider, who's playing on the opposite side of the field, and has figured out that Jair and Razul and, and the secondary has to get more, has to get a little bit more ball hawk happy. And we've been getting turnovers. So, but Jair was the biggest question or biggest, statement. And I think watching him really showcase his talents and his speed, his intelligence, his, obviously his smack talk too, his gritty, which was beautiful.
And that was Alexander who broke it up. Oh, he's got a little gritty right next.
Absolutely. That was pretty flawless. Yeah, it was cold. And you see what we paid him, and this is the game that you want from a guy like that, because that justifies every cent.
Absolutely. And that was another huge part of why I was so nervous this week, because I was like, he went and ran his mouth saying that the week 1 was a fluke. And I'm like, bro,
Griddles.
It's Justin Jefferson. That's really scary. That's
absolutely.
A little, what are you doing? You don't talk smack to Randy Moss. You don't talk,
right. You don't say that kind of stuff.
Those types of guys. Especially when you haven't always been that successful against them. I mean, it's a very small sample size. But it just felt like, bro, what are you doing? But again, here we go. Joe Barry decided to, I don't know, watch the Freezer podcast and maybe listen to the same things we've been saying for months, and let our athletes be athletes. Let them play the position.
Right.
Stop making Jair playing in 1978 Tampa 2 defense.
Yes.
And let him get up in something. How many times have we come on the show with this screenshot of Jair lined up 15 yards deep on a guy on 3rd and 4, and we're like, what are you doing? What did we see against Minnesota? Which, I mean, honestly, there's a lot of really great plays, but my favorite plays were when they highlighted Jair literally punching Justin Jefferson in the face right off the line, time after time after time.
And that's who he is. That's how he gets in the player's head.
Yes.
Not only does he do it on the field, but he does it on the line of scrimmage too.
Absolutely. And he sets a tone, and he gets in their face, and he doesn't let them get off the line immediately. And it changes receivers. Receivers are divas. They're always going to be divas. That's the position. And you start punching them in the face most of the time, unless you're talking a Calvin Johnson, maybe a Terrell Owens, some, massive Megatron freak. You just got to get in their face. It's the same way you play defense against a guy like Devonta Smith, a guy like Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, any one of those guys. You blast him in the face. And to see Joe Barry just kind of let him play his position makes sense. Another guy that I've seen continuously progress, and I brought it up the last 2 weeks, Quay Walker. Allowing him to just play the ball, do what he does, use his speed, use his length. He did such a great job. And I think seeing those two levels, we've seen drastic improvement. But it doesn't go without saying that defensive front has just looked incredible, when I thought that they were probably going to be the one thing that looked the worst when we lost Rashawn Gary, because I thought to how are they going to get pressure? How are we going to funnel in? How are we going to stop the run? But what it seems is it's Preston just steps up. The big guys in the middle, Wyatt, Reed, everybody seems to just be sucking things up. I didn't feel like Dalvin Cook had that great of a game. It didn't look like he was going to have that great of a game. So that was a huge part. But for the defense just to come in, or not to come in, to be at home and to really dictate what Minnesota was going to do, was pretty great to finally see them kind of control it. And it wasn't, to me, a game of freebies per se. The interceptions, I don't feel like were freebies. I feel like they were all well earned with tips and pressures. So that kind of helps too. I feel like sometimes when our team gets interceptions. You're like, oh, well, like some of those 2 interceptions, right? Like you look at those and you're like, yes, they're interceptions, but like, he just kind of like threw up a 500 ball and it was a terrible throw where I feel like we actually earned them a little bit more against the Vikings.
Yeah, and I felt like this defense understood that. Look, how many times have you said it, Fred? Let Kirk be Kirk, and he will eventually make his mistakes.
Kirk going
And
Kirk.
this team, I don't know if there's one weird thing, and I don't know how Vikings fans feel about this. They were so ready to get rid of Mike Zimmer, duly noted, fine, because they were so worried about using the pass game. But then for some reason, they've really neglected using one of the most probably the top 7 back in the league in Dalvin Cook. And they
Probably
just
better.
didn't realize how to use him. And that kind of goes to the comment what Drew Cave said was, did he even play? Because I didn't really notice him because our defensive line. Now, granted, I get it. They did lose a center. They had also basically they lost 2 centers because Garrett Bradbury didn't play in the game.
Yeah.
But then they lost their backup, and then they lost I think it was a tackle too, in the game. So you really did have a pretty makeshift offensive line out there, but doesn't matter. It's still you got to play football. And
bro, we've had makeshift lines too, and we've won games. We didn't play like absolute
believe
dog
me,
crap
yeah.
and give up
When you're
41
putting
on
Lane Taylor out on tackle, let me tell you, we've had
I'm
some
just
pretty
saying, like
atrocious
it's
offensive lines.
to me, it sounds like a pissy ass team making a bunch of excuses.
They always make it exactly. Every team that loses makes up
My
excuses.
offensive line sucks. Like, bro, our offensive line was terrible for a while.
Go
Our
talk to
quarterback had a
Brady.
broken
Go
thumb
talk to
for a
Brady.
while.
How
Like,
many
what
guys
do
does
you
he have
even-
out?
Yeah, what do you even say? No, you couldn't come up with a decent scheme. And it goes back to even again what we talked about last week in coaches again going off of their game plans and starting to do stupid things. And again, maybe it's not coaches, maybe it's the quarterbacks, but like if you're smart at all, like run the ball against Green Bay. I know our run defense has gotten a little bit better, but like Philadelphia
should be running the
torched
ball,
us, right? Miami could have easily torched us had they not stopped giving the ball to Mostert. Dalvin Cook could have torched us had they just continued to give it. Think of how many less interceptions, how many less mistakes would have happened had you just been like giving him the ball, but yet teams won't do it. And that's where my fear if we get into the playoffs comes is, like the teams like Philly who know they can run it against us, or teams like San Francisco who know they can run against us. What do we do then? But that's for the future.
Well, right. I mean, San Francisco had no problem letting Jimmy Garoppolo throw 10 times against us and beat us.
8.
And they are very 8, whatever. So you
don't give them that much credit.
You definitely have more dedicated coaches that stick to their game plan. And I think there is that thing that I mentioned last week about other teams when they play against the Green Bay Packers. It just seems like it's like a Jekyll and Hyde thing. They like go away from what they're doing best and they just feel like, oh, it's the Packers. I have something to prove. It's like, okay, what's it? Kevin O'Connell, right? Is that his name? No, what's his? Yeah. So you want to make a statement. You want to sweep the North. I think they swept. No, they lost to the Lions. So you want to make a big statement. You want to beat the Packers in Lambeau because you can do it in US Bank. But can you do it here? I get it. But then why go away from the one guy that actually could give us the most problems? I mean, yes, is Justin Jefferson amazing? Of course he is. But at the same time, do you truly trust Kirk Cousins to win you a game like that? I mean, I get it. He's just coach. He's going to, stand up for him, whatever. But let's just be honest. I mean, this guy has crumbled in big games, especially against good opponents, throughout the majority of his career. And yet here you go. You still try to put the game in his hands when you could easily put it in someone else's and maybe use him not as a game manager, but hey, what we're doing with Rodgers, give us like 3-4 big plays, right? Give us those memorable Rodgers throws. We're like, damn, okay, Bobby touchdown, like whatever it may be. And then, hey, let our ground game just beat you, slowly and let the clock run out. Like that's how I would have played it. But again, I'm not the coach of the Vikings and they lost.
Well, I believe Kirk Cousins, I don't know. I mean, I have to get fact checked on this one, but I mean, I know for a few years in the last like 3 or 4 years, like it was historically one of the best quarterbacks off play action. I mean, one of the best ever quarterbacks off play action because they used Dalvin Cook. You take that away and there's just no fear. There's no concern. And I think teams are willing to play that. And I just don't understand why you don't continue that against a team like Green Bay that's kind of our Achilles, right? Is just like, run on us. But I mean, yeah, I think ultimately defense was fantastic. And they did what if they can just continue this, it's gonna be special. What do we have, like 12 interceptions or something in the last
I think it's like 8 interceptions.
4 games, or 12 takeaways in the last 4 games.
Yeah, 12 takeaways, right? Yep.
Yeah.
Well,
which, pretty crazy.
Let's move on to the one guy that we all want to talk about, and the guy that has pretty much shifted the I guess like the face of this franchise in the right direction that we have not seen in a while. That's Keyshawn Nixon.
He's only 12 yards total for both teams combined, no first downs. This is Nixon, who's dangerous. Oh, here he goes! My goodness! He's taking it the distance.
You talked about how dangerous he is. The most kick return yards in the NFL. And he shows it right there. He had a 94-yard kick return last week. And here he is again. Wow.
Finally, we have ourselves a weapon. And dare I say, a Devin Hester type weapon.
Dude.
The fact being that teams now might have to start pooching and kicking it super duper high. And Matt LaFleur joked around today and said, we're just going to throw the ball back towards him if they kick it short.
I don't think it's a joke.
Yeah, maybe not.
And he was back for punts.
Which is very
Which I was questioning the other day. I was like last week when Cobb took one, I was like, why are we not developing packages, honestly, offensively for him? But even still, like, we need him at punt return and kick return.
Sometimes I feel like I've, when we were coaching, I felt like there was that, like, someone mentioned something about like when the ball's up in the air for a punt return comparably to a kick. Obviously, it's a whole
completely different. Yeah,
you
totally
got gunners coming at you immediately. You have to first be prepared and also be brave because you might take a shot.
Brave is definitely something he is. I mean, that dude literally grabs the ball and he just hits it. And I feel like that's something I haven't seen from a kick returner, like across the league, for pretty much since like Devin Hester. Like, I'm not even going to consider
like Josh Cribbs and Devin Hester.
Cribbs a little bit too, but like to the point where they just get it and they go. It's not like okay, I'm going to go. It's right, like they're already going. And like that's like they just go and they're like, we'll figure it out on the fly. And I think that's what makes him like so unique. But I would like to see them put him in some offensive packages. Simply just maybe as a decoy, right? I'm not saying like let's go toss the ball to him, but like imagine we line up in the playoffs against some team and all of a sudden, now we have Nixon out there running sweeps or running jet sweeps or running whatever. Like that would freak some teams out. They would probably,
they have to factor in it, even if it's not if it's not even like scary. They have to factor for it, right? Like just like they have been now with Christian Watson.
And you don't say a single word about it, and you go like, let's say we play the Niners, you throw that out there all of a sudden, and you have no word about it at all. You watch that D coordinator start stressing and freaking out to figure out how they're going to get somebody on him without taking somebody off, and then all of a sudden now he's running fake jet sweeps. He's running maybe some slant pat. I mean, I'm just saying, I feel like that could really be one of those little, like, you got to pull that shit out if you're going to go against the Niners, because if we get matched up against them, again, this is all potentially, but if we do, I hope that we do everything in the entire playbook to beat that team.
But remember now, isn't it like when we saw it against the Jets and when we saw it against the Lions the first time, these teams pull out the worst crap out of their butts possible just to beat us, because they know it's like, look, we need to do something out of the ordinary to beat this team, because they're like, look, it's the Green Bay Packers,
annual powerhouse.
Right. I think the Green Bay Packers have to take that mentality now. Look, hey, we are not the same team that we used to be, putting up 35 points, Aaron Rodgers MVP. Like, we need to be the team that needs to be creative, because now these juggernauts in the Eagles and the 49ers, Cowboys, whoever, they're not expecting it.
And I think that's true. And I think we've seen it in the Grit Factory. I said Grit Factory. In the Grit Factory. in the sense of like, we've never seen this team be a fighter team. We've never seen this team be gritty. We've
Right.
never seen this team,
It's been very classy and like
prevail
finesse.
when things are getting rough, right? We always talk about when we get punched in the face, we just crumble. I think this year, the way that we kind of started and then we had that terrible losing streak, it could have been so easy to mail everything in. And we saw a little bit of it, but this team's really kind of come together and pushed to get to where we are. And I think that is one of the biggest accomplishments that they've made all year. But I think that you have to take that, and then you have to take a little bit of like, we don't get to coast anymore in games. We need to be the ones that are aggressive,
Right.
innovative, and keep that foot on the throat, because we're just not that team anymore.
Yeah, and let's shift our focus now to the offense because that is the whole reason we're talking about this, right? Because this offense isn't generally going to eat up the clock and run 12 to 14 plays. But now, at the same time, I would say if we did stick to the run game and use Aaron Jones the way we should, like we kind of did in this game and the last couple games now that we've had this win streak, you can see some of these long methodical drives that can keep that defense on, on the bench and obviously, put their defense in a tired basically state because our defense is playing well. They're getting takeaways. That's putting their defense on way longer than they need to after they just had a long drive. So I feel like the recipe is there. It's called the run game and defense, and just hoping that Rodgers can just not make too many dumb throws like are over people's head by a mile or throwing that stupid pick that he does in the Lions game where he's trying to thread a window. I think that we just need to, see Rodgers take a step back, which I feel like he has this in this little run and make
Yep.
the necessary throws that are possible. Because if you look at the offensive line with Bakhtiari back, was a huge get, and it was nice to see this line give him protection. That Tanyan touchdown doesn't happen without that offensive line blocking that extra couple seconds. Rodgers is able to get back into the pocket, set his feet, planted, and then he makes a dart of a throw to Tanyan who's wide open. That stuff doesn't happen if you don't have pass protection. So I think it's a really nice thing that we're seeing this team finally. I hope this is every week we say this and it's getting really tiresome, but I hope we keep using Aaron Jones the way that they're starting to use him. Now, granted, this guy, I do get a little concerned that I feel like he's getting hurt way too quickly.
Yeah.
Like it's like that long run he got hurt on that one too. And it's like maybe he pulled a hammy, maybe he did something with his calf. I don't know what it was. They didn't really say on that play, but he went on the sideline after that play, and we didn't see him for another couple plays. So it's like, I don't know what his pain tolerance is, and I don't know what obviously everybody's playing injured right now. We're all trying to, grit it out and then, make it for this little stretch run. But I'm a little concerned with him as well. And maybe we start seeing a little bit more Patrick Taylor.
Yeah. I mean, I've been saying for, I feel like a while, he just scares me because he seems so little. He seems so fragile. Which is again like why I want to, maybe see him more in the pass game, see him more in situations like that. But I agree. I think it's got to be a run game. I hope that we don't get into it and Aaron Rodgers feels like I got to go play hero ball, to try to be really cool. I think Detroit's like second or worse in the league, averaging like 5.3 or 4 yards per carry against, opposing offenses, which is, like do the math, right? 2 runs, we got a first down. Let's just keep chugging. That's a huge, huge stat that I feel like they really need to utilize. And with Detroit being such so weird to say, with Detroit being such a high scoring team, really,
right, we're at that point. Here we are.
I don't
2023.
Get it. I guess I like haven't watched enough games because I just feel like,
why would you need to? It's Detroit.
Who's scoring all these points? I know, like who's scoring all these points? I didn't realize that I need to like stack my fantasy team with Detroit Lions, but apparently I do.
We're in a new day. We're in a new
I guess so.
New age.
But I think that's a huge move is like we need to run the ball and we need to possess the clock as much as possible to keep them off the field so that we can try to limit their points. And then just in general, right? Like, I don't think that has to be just against Detroit. I think that's the recipe for success for every game is we just need to keep running the ball and not be afraid to utilize that. And I think Rodgers is kind of seeing that. And then I also want to just double down on the offensive line shout out. I feel like over the last, maybe 5 to 6 weeks, like we've started to see that progression of them kind of gelling better and better and better. And to put Bach in there, he looks really good. And this offensive line looks really, really great. So that's a huge plus for us as well.
I want to talk about Rodgers now because obviously this run, and they've probably talked about it a lot on different media shows, but this belief in the team and the belief in himself, obviously, as well. You're 4-8, you're staring at possibly maybe your last season as a Packer. You don't know that. Maybe it's your last couple of home games as a Packer. You don't know if your playoff hopes are alive. You got people chomping at the bit to get Jordan Love in the game. And yet here you are, week 18 on Sunday Night Football against a rival Detroit Lions in your own house on a cold January day in Lambeau, being able to play your way into the playoffs like you did in Chicago against Chicago, obviously, and getting this like mojo back and getting this life back into this team. I want to get your thoughts at least on the aura of the Green Bay Packers.
I mean, I don't want to toot my own horn here, but I'm pretty sure I said all freaking year, it doesn't matter how you start. It matters how you finish. I don't care if we lose 6 games. I don't care if
I
we
don't
lose
think
7
you
games.
expected us to be 4-8.
Not at all. Now, I said I don't care if we lose 7 games. I didn't say against who or how those 7 games were going to be. A 5-game losing streak was not what I was thinking. I was thinking like maybe every 2 or 3 games we lose in my perfect world. But it's true, and I've been saying it for the last couple of years. I mean, the 13-3 years are fantastic, right? They're fun. We get to talk about them. We're sexy. We're exciting. But it always seemed like we'd get to the playoffs and we didn't have the juice, or we were just burnt out, or we weren't like teams figured us out. And not that I feel like, this team is like we haven't been showing everything. I think there's still a lot of work to be done, but the fact that we're kind of coming on, the fact that Aaron Rodgers is healthy for the first time, the fact that the offensive line is looking better, the defense has kind of figured out their mojo. I feel like it plays off really well. And I think the locker room grows from things like that, right? You grow through the dark places. Like that's where it is. And like they were in that dark place when they were in that 5-game lose streak. Jair's questioning things. People are like, whoa, Rodgers had to step up for maybe one of the first times in his career. I don't know everything, but when Jair made those comments about, we're going to just probably lose to the Jets, Rodgers had to like be a leader and actually step up and say that. So I think some of those things, and then I think, Rodgers, gets his 2010 haircut back. That's big.
Yes.
He ditches Blue of Earth, starts dating the Bucks girl. Like, I'm just
Mallory
saying,
Edens.
I mean, those are some really good. Hey,
whatever you need, man. Whatever you need.
Really good personal health choices by Aaron Rodgers to cut the hair, get rid of the psycho hippie babble chick, and you're dating the
was she really
owner's
psycho?
daughter. I don't know if she's probably a really nice lady, but sorry, Blue of Earth. You're probably a really sweetheart. But to go now, you're dating, the Bucks owner. Well, he's Bucks owner too, but I mean, it just seems like he's kind of figuring it out, right? Like that's all coming together. The team's coming together. And I would be like shell-shocked, absolutely shell-shocked if he had Detroit come in for the playoff, potentially last game, and did not deliver. I just don't think that's him. I just can't see him not making this game an absolute like legendary game.
Hey, I'm gonna tell you this right now. I think this game is gonna be interesting because we might know what the fate is of the Lions by Saturday night.
That too. So let me ask you that. I wanted to ask you that question because I was talking to Ethan about it the other day. But does it really matter, right?
No,
and that's the thing. So I saw something on Instagram today about it where a player was like, if they know they're out, everyone keeps talking about Dan Campbell will obviously still fire them up. And he was like, no, man, players will just they're just not going to be in it. And I'm like, I don't know if I really buy into that. Like, I can't imagine that a player just would be like, nah, I'm good. I ain't gonna play the rest of the game. Like, I don't think that really ultimately matters. And honestly, it kind of scares me more if they are out of it, because now they're going to be a little bit more angry. They might be willing to do a couple more things that they weren't going to, normally do.
They want to play spoiler
Like
alert.
trick plays, things like that. Dan Campbell did. I don't think he would not do that. He did it to us, I think, early in the season.
He did.
So I'm kind of thinking like, oh man, I don't know. Like, I feel like as much as I do think we obviously, we'll pull this up for our own sake, they're not going to go down without a fight, and it's going to be a little bit of a bloody battle, I think, on Lambeau Field.
If it was any other coach coaching the team, I feel like maybe they would have possibly like at least called it in if they knew they were down by like more than 2 scores. I think going into it, they're probably like, oh, this is 0-0 game. I think we'll play spoiler, whatever. But I think
I want to see where Goff is. Goff is the one guy that I want to see how his attitude is.
Right.
If they lose, if they're out, does Goff come in and still be a leader and actually play hard for the team? Because he seems like the kind of person that I could like see just kind of be like, well, fuck it, we're out of it, man. Like, he'll still play, but like it's just not gonna have that same fire.
I just don't know if Dan Campbell's gonna let that happen though. I think this guy's just so in everybody's like he's just ingrained as like this like weird like we got to do this for Dan kind of like mentality in this and all their players. Like I feel like they've just like bought in. It's almost like Stockholm syndrome. Like they're like captured by him and they're like, well, shit, are you my dad? Like, I think they're just going to start fighting.
I watched some
he
of
is.
That.
I feel like the Lions have started to figure it out actually in the sense of like, the Bears have tried to figure out so many different things. They fired all their GMs and owners and presidents, whatever. And then they've, had different quarterbacks and here's yet the Lions who have always been the little doormat of the division. And then here they go, slowly picking the right, pieces. It took them a while, but now I feel like they have the leader, they have the GM. Now they have I don't know if they have the quarterback, but they definitely have pieces that make them into this, like, at least a noisemaker in the division and potentially in the, in the conference. Cause here they are week 18 fighting for their, playoff hopes. So, so Lions game, I know, this is everybody's kind of, putting us and penciling us as the victor. And I think I am too, because, it's Aaron Rodgers. And like you mentioned before, I don't think he's just going to let this team that he's pretty much owned for a very long time, just as long with the Bears, come into his house and say, oh, I'm going to get into the playoffs over you. But at the same time too, I also feel like sometimes Matt LaFleur, maybe this might be a Matt LaFleur issue where we sometimes overthink things and then we do things that we probably shouldn't be doing. And then we, we let things unravel. And then here we go, we're down 2 scores again. And then a team like this that is playing with everything and maybe not everything to lose, let them just run away with it. And then here we are, we're like, 3 scores down and it's like, you see people walking out of the stadium already. Like I get nervous about games like this.
That's a really good point, man. I mean, we've seen where LaFleur against in big time moments and big time games can be a little skittish, if you will. This would
goes
be
away from the run game for the rest of the game. Like Aaron Jones gets 6 touches. Like, come on.
Yeah. So that's true. I mean, I don't do that, dude. Don't put that in my brain.
Well, hey, I'm just calling out. We see it for the last 17 weeks. So I don't think I feel like this is LaFleur's, what is this, his 4th year, right? So 4th season as a head coach. You've been in the playoffs every single year since you've been here. Now you're fighting to get in. This is a little bit different of a situation as a coach, because you've had this MVP quarterback that just waltzes you into 10 wins. And then you got a few of them that are like, some close ones, but you've been there as a 1 or a 2 seed or whatever before, and now you're in a different state. So how do you handle that? How are you, mentally preparing yourself, the locker room, your other coaches, your staff, whatever it is, to potentially close out a season and get your ass into the playoffs? Because once you're in, fine. everything's a scratch again. You're 0-0, just like everybody else. And then you can focus on that opponent. But right now, you got to put aside the 4-8, and now we're 5-8, whatever. Sorry, now we're 8-8, whatever. Throw that aside and think of this one singular, game, and understand that, look, what do I need to do as a head coach of the Green Bay Packers with this Hall of Fame quarterback and this, star of a franchise to get them over the hump against this team that wants to be us, right? These Lions fans have been just praying for having some sort of success like the Green Bay Packers have had. And now here they are looking at it with their own eyes and still in shock because they're like, we're the Lions. Why are we this good?
Yeah.
And here we are. Like, we need to put our foot on their neck and say, no. We're still putting you down here just with the Bears and and yourself. So that's what I want to see.
Yeah. It's, well, shoot, it's 30 years, right? Oh, little over 30 years for them to get into the playoffs, right? 92, I believe, was the last year that the Lions made the playoffs, right?
No, they had Stafford year. Remember, they lost against the Saints right away.
Oh yeah, that's right.
They had Stafford and Calvin made 1 year, so they have had one in there. So, but otherwise, yeah, it's been 30 years.
That seems pretty crazy that they
Remember they went like 10-6 or something that year.
Yeah. Okay. I was.
Where's Iowa Joe when you need him?
As I was saying it, I was like, gosh, it can't be that. Like, they've had to have.
Yeah, they have squeaked in before, but it was a very short stint because they got absolutely train wrecked by New Orleans.
Yeah,
so.
I think your point though, like, yeah, they're gonna come in here, they're gonna be hyped. It's a Sunday night game. Jared Goff plays terrible against the cold, and we just need to remind them, like, you guys are still bottom of the barrel. You ain't nothing. You don't get to come in here and do anything, and just put them down immediately.
Yes.
and watch them crumble, and let them be the ones who end up becoming skittish. Let Jared Goff throw some stupid interceptions. Dan Campbell freak out. There's some opportunity there just to kind of go out or go up early on them, and then watch them kind of falter.
Anything you want to see defensively, offensively, or special teams? Because now that, obviously, I think we can agree that we just want to see Keyshawn Nixon.
I'm just saying, if Nixon returns another kick, I'm jumping through my roof, man.
Anything that you see.
I remember so vividly being a kid with Desmond Howard, and you know,
right.
like, being so hyped about when the ball would get kicked, and to watch him because I knew there was something cool that was going to happen. The same with Devin Hester, actually. And I mean, honestly, I've not felt that way about anything special teams, and never a returner for special teams in 30 years, damn near 30 years since Desmond Howard. So that to me is so exciting, and I love it. So I hope that he gets the ball. That's it. I just want him to get the ball. And even if he gets 5 yards, or, doesn't return a touchdown, but he gets, 70, 40, just gives us good field position. I just want to see him touch the ball.
That's all I can ask for. Get us to 40. Get us to 40.
All I want is that. Yep. I just want to see that. We have not had, our field position has been garbage for the last 3 years. I would say that's probably one of the biggest.
Feels like 10 years, honestly.
Seasons. Yeah. But the last couple big playoff losses, field position, big time.
Yes.
And that's a huge deal for me. So I love what he's doing, and I want to see him touch the ball more. And then defensively, I want to see them just belly up in that run, right? I don't think I'm too nervous about the pass, but I'm more nervous about the running game. But again, like, I haven't watched enough to Detroit to really know enough. So I don't really know. I just want defense to play defense. And then offensively, I think we got to unleash Watson on an early play, like a number 1, number 2 play.
They were trying last week.
Minnesota type thing. Yeah, like same thing with Minnesota, the week 1. Just try to catch them sleeping on play 1 or 2 and just run them on a 9. Yeah.
All right. A little bit of time left. Let's get to predictions, and then we'll get out of here.
All right. So, we've kind of talked about a bunch of different things. Jared, my biggest thing, it kind of comes down to Nixon on our end, because I think, like I said, not just for he's going to score touchdowns, but field position, getting the ball at better positions than we've ever gotten before, I think is huge. It helps our defense. It gives our defense more confidence when they take the field. It obviously gives our offense more confidence to drive 40 yards versus driving 80 yards. I think that is such a big deal for us. So I'm really, really kind of dependent a little bit on that, which is scary. Special teams. Wow. And then I think for Detroit, it's Jared Goff. I don't think he's ready. I don't think he plays good in cold weather. We've seen him struggle big time in cold weather games across the board. He's got tiny hands, and I saw that on ESPN. They ripped on him for like 5 minutes about his tiny hands, and I was like, "Dang, that's really harsh." But he's like, I think like a 74 QBR rating in cold weather games. He's like 2-5 or something. He's just really like his record is not good in freezing or below freezing games. And he's a dome guy. He's from California, so I just feel like we have to really use that to our advantage. And I think if they're out, right, say they get knocked out, it's cold, he's getting hit, you'll see him crumble. And I think that's kind of where we kind of just play the game. But I do think, man, I don't score wise, I really want to put a burger on it. But I'm nervous, so I'm not gonna put a burger on it. I'm gonna go. We were almost close to going to what I said last week too. By the way, we never talked about how close my prediction was versus everybody else.
What was your prediction?
Like 38 something.
Didn't we score?
Wasn't it?
What was our score? We
41?
scored 41, right?
Yeah, you guys all picked like 21.
It's Vikings Packers. Of course I did.
I'm just saying. All right, I'm gonna go. Packers obviously win. And for a new one, I'm gonna go. It's a Sunday night game. It's gonna be legendary. It's gonna be 41-31.
Oh, he does go with 40 burger. What is that? It's a burger. It's literally a burger.
It's not even the same one. Yeah.
I was so quiet, so I was like, I figured like with the 40 burger, it's like ba 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 ba, like
No.
But I like it.
a
Hey,
ba, 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 ba.
40 burger from Fred. Whew. Okay, I too have the Packers winning this game, and
Wait, I'm not ready. Hold on. Say that one more time.
I was gonna say I have the Packers winning. Oh, that was really quick. I was like ready to dance. Yeah, as far as scores though, because this defense is dog shit. So I'm saying 42 for sure. I think it's gonna be a shootout. I think 42-30. 42-30. The Packers win this one. Yeah. Ooh, see, giving us a look at this. I kind of want to eat this burger. It's so sparkly.
Don't eat it. It's not good for you. So 240 burgers. All right. So you said 42,
who wouldn't be picking 40 burger? It'd be Matt. Matt wouldn't be putting it 40.
Matt actually can't eat a burger right now because he's sick.
Yeah, that's true.
So you said 42-35. I said 41-31. Right?
Yes. So that 1 point is going to be the difference between the two of us.
Okay. But the Packers still win. All day, dude. I could watch that
all day. Yeah, you could. You really could. Well, guys, thank you so much again. Thank you for coming out on a Thursday evening with us. We will be back at our normal time on Tuesday next week. But Matt should
either really pumped or really pissed off. I'm sure.
Right. It's going to be a world of emotions, I'm sure, just like it is every time for a Packer Sunday. Remember, and I'm sure I speak for Fred and Matt here on this one. Be grateful for what you have around you. Be grateful for the life that you have and the people around you, and understand that, this life is only one life. We don't get 9 or 12 or anything like that. So make sure that you are loving everybody around you and loving life itself. Football is fun, but it's just a sport. It's just entertainment. It's not, the end all be all. So know that there's better things in the world that are, more important.
Be kind to people, be generous to people, be graceful to people, not just when something bad happens, but every single day. Live that way, because I guarantee it'll be a better world.
Check out Green and Gorgeous right after us because they'll be on Game On Wisconsin.
How
And
are we not green and gorgeous?
I know we are kind of green and gorgeous. We're wearing
is
green today too. Exactly.
right.
Well, you got
Anyway.
a little dose of Green and Gorgeous before the actual Green and Gorgeous. But thank you so much again. We'll see you next Tuesday. And like always, I'm Sanjay. That's Fred. Go Pack.
Go, Pack. Go.